Well, let's talk a little bit more about some
Okay.
particular struggles that athletes have. You've had a player or two or dozens that have different mental capacities, some maybe with some real mental struggles. Last Olympics, Simone Biles reminded us of the impact of emotions and mental health and the importance of that. So that's a big deal. Talk a little bit about how you deal with players aware of the mental kind of struggles they might have.
Well, I think for years we didn't have problems recognizing that a guy might have a challenge, that he might have something emotionally or mentally that was a struggle for him. I think we were pretty poor at understanding it. You know, we might walk on eggshells a little bit, or we might try this or try that. And again, I think it's been really healthy for us in the last few years for mental health discussions to be had in public, for us to be able to chase through a lot of what you've done of identifying what trauma does to us in terms of how it affects how we think and how we learn and how we perform. But I would tell you again, experientially, it helped me understand a young man that I knew had issues, let's say, the more I got to know him. I had to know his story a little bit. Not being Dr. Phil, I'm not qualified to make those calls. But if I get to know his story and I realize there is absolutely not a man in his life anywhere, I mean, he's being raised by all women or this or that, then I understand sometimes why maybe that relationship when he gets barked at by a man is not received well, or that he doesn't have that background. I didn't understand how it worked, but I could know better about, man, this guy has this going on at home. So let's try to do it this way. Now, from a practical standpoint, what I tried to do is if I knew a guy had a quick trigger, then you just really do everything you can not to trigger him. Now, it sounds overly simplistic, but something sets this guy off. He's a really good player. I really need him on the field. So what's the pragmatic thing? Well, not to not have discipline, not to not have a policy that you can do. But let's don't set him off and trigger him in a way that now I can't come back from.
The brain forms by experiences, by the things we experience. They come in and the brain actually forms pathways that take that experience and help us to understand it, our environment based on it. So like if I'm a child and I got bit by a dog, all of a sudden dogs have a fear factor. So I'm afraid of dogs. And that can be overcome by different experiences, but it has to be rewired. That happens in our brains. So let's say you've got an African-American athlete and his one exposure to white men is the guy who came and handcuffed his dad and took him away. Right? Very common experience.
In his world.
In his world.
Might not be a common deal for us
right.
white guys.
Yeah. But he's seen that. Right. Now, all of a sudden, you're a white coach.
Yeah.
And you raise your voice at him and he reacts and you say, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Instead of recognizing, and you may even lose the kid if you don't step back and recognize there's more going on here. Right. And that's true for all of us. That's a very easy kind of trigger point.
But see, Joe, you helped me the last couple of years by just giving us some simple tools, not easy tools, but simple tools. And I mean it that way because what we want to do is respond the way we always respond. Yeah. We want to just deal with people the way we always do.
Suck it up, get over it.
Because that's what we've done. That's the way we. But when you want to go, all right, what are you hearing me say? What are you? I mean, when you're having some other conversations, if you're really trying to reach these guys, I mean, just keep the mission in mind. I just felt like some of the simple tools of just learning how to communicate it differently. That doesn't mean I'm a soft coach. No. That doesn't mean I'm going to allow you to run over the program. That's not what we're talking about here. But learning that there really is PTSD in these guys. There really is a trauma that's inflicted some issues for them, that they hear it differently and experience it differently. And so part of that is we've got to learn who they are. We got to know their story, and we got to get to know them.
Yeah, it really is brain science, something you've always heard. They don't care what you know until they know that you care. It's
Right.
really, your brain responds differently if you know you care. But you take an experience of a kid who has had a lot of people walk out on him, a lot of relationships that have gone sour. All of a sudden, you say something to that kid and you say, hey, I need to talk with you after practice. That kid's neuro pathways now have already anticipated that you're getting ready to get rid of me because of his life experiences.
Right.
And unless you shape that, and we talk about like, hey, maybe instead of inviting you up there, maybe let's say, hey, let's play catch after practice and we'll talk there. And now I'm addressing things without triggering that abandonment kind of thing that he feels.
One of the things I did learn was I would tell guys, look, I need to talk to you after practice. You are not in trouble, and I don't need anything. You're exactly right. I don't know all these guys, but man, they would hit the panic button just because the head coach said he wanted to talk to me after practice.
Well, you never wanted to go to the principal's office.
No, I didn't.
For any reason, right?
Also, most of the time I'm bringing them in to say, hey, I'm going to have you be captain next week. And they're going, well, I thought I was in trouble.
You know, there you go. There you go. What about, again, it's this same line, but kids that are struggling with domestic violence in their home, or they've got depression, and it's obvious there's things going on. You're right. You're not Dr. Field. You're not a counselor. But what's your role as a coach in both trying to get the best out of them and trying to help them be the best?
Well, I think first of all, decide, we say this a lot as coaches, but do we really care about them? I mean, do we really let our heart reach out to want to get to know them more and to care how they succeed? Or are we just trying to win a game? And if you're not careful, you get caught up, even with the best of intentions, to just, I gotta be busy and win games. But if I really am caring about that person, I'm going to get to know them. Okay, I'm going to get to understand their story. And then all of a sudden you go, golly, why is this guy dealing with depression? I mean, he looks like he has a great life, you know, and that's not the issue. It's not logical. He's dealing with it.
Yeah.
And so if we don't come alongside and try to be a safe place, I just wanted our football program to be a safe place. And I would say that a lot of times to guys, man, I know you're dealing with all this junk, but just know when you come here, you don't have that. We are a safe place.
That's great brain science again, because the brain, when its environment is predictable and safe, now my brain's open for business. But if I'm afraid, scared, or if I'm uncertain about what's happening, if it's this way one day and another day, then my brain shuts down and I'm in more of the survival mode.
Well, I will tell you, as coaches, we will fight that a little bit, especially maybe, I don't want to call it old school, old coaches, but some of the old school is we like to be authoritarian. I mean, we want to be the head ball coach. And there's a little bit of that we're a little bit untouchable, unapproachable. And for a long time, I was fine with that until I realized it doesn't work. I mean, if we're serious, we've got to open ourselves up to relationship, which is harder, but it's the best chance we have for reaching some of these guys.
Yeah, that's good. That's really important. You have players that you get little conflicts going on the team. This player's down on that player, and they're not trusting this player, and it's impacting your team. How do you step into that as a coach? What are some things you can do there? Let me throw in too that sometimes it's a coach struggling with a particular player.
Yeah. Well, for me personally, sometimes that's a little easier because I feel like, I won't say I'm always real close to our staff, but I've been the guy that helped hire them, that helped bring them on, that helped assign their duties, all those kind of things. And so I feel like I've got a better place to be able to hold that guy accountable sometimes as a peer, that I'm like, dude, you're the adult here. You're going to let this young man run your day. You're the guy that said you wanted to be a coach. So again, trying to bring him back. Why are you doing this? And why are you letting this conflict take you down a path where you don't get to do what you want to do, what you dream of doing? So I try to have that to some level. And then I think always empathy and point of view. I mean, that's what I always try to get you to do is go, okay, can you, in any way, shape, or form, can you look at this from his side? If I could look at it from his side, even though I think he's absolutely wrong, if I could somehow get from his angle to this is my background, this is what I've heard you say, then could I at least come to a point where I understand maybe why he might feel that way?
Yeah.
And if I can at least get to that empathy stage, then it gives us a chance to solve the conflict.
So you're getting him, one of the ways we say it is, instead of saying what's wrong with him, asking what's happened to him. So you're trying to get him to at least think through what's going on in his life, which again is that relationship piece.
Well, and I think you have to help that by going, what do you think he's going through?
Yeah.
Why is he seeing it like that? You don't have the answers, but if you'll at least have a little bit of get out of yourself here a little bit and just go, there might be another point of view here.
Yeah. So every coach knows relationships matter.
Right.
But here's what happens. We get in the season, no matter what sport it is, there's the pressure of the next game and the preparation for the next game. And all of a sudden, we're emphasizing the nuts and bolts and the strategies, and we're forgetting about that relationship. And one of the things I've learned from some good coaches is to actually calendar in that commitment to relationships. So how many times a week am I actually intentionally, before practice, after practice, making a point to ask how they're doing, finding out something relationally? I know you do it with your staff where you have different coaches share, and that's because we have to open up if we're going to get them to. But that intentionality, calendaring it in because it matters, is something that I think is a real helpful thing.
So in a similar way, I've never thought about it like that, but I think that's why when you're trying to build a particular culture or style with your program, when you look at, all right, this is what we do on Mondays. You know, we have this built into the program where we're going to make sure that we do what we call the highlight or the spotlight. And we have a little slower day, and we allow a player to come up, and the team can ask him questions. He's on the spotlight. Very informal, but it's a chance for us to learn a little bit about him. And we'll do 2 or 3 a week. Well, that's one touch. Then we've got what you talked about. I've got coaches talking in front of the team. Then we have what we called our M&M group, but we schedule it in at the end of practice on a certain day that a coach and his 8 or 9 players, they're not the position he coaches. They're not the guys he already knows. We've drafted the team to where he's got 8 or 9 other guys. And sometimes we're strategic about it. Maybe it's trying to put this man with this young man that needs a little more of what we think that guy has. But we just give them another 15 minutes to spend time outside of football together to build that. Then we're going to have a meal here, and we're going to have a meal there, and we're going to go to these people's homes, or we're going to go to this church. And I think it's funny when you say that, and I began to start looking at our program, we probably calendar in about 5 to 6 of those a week to make sure we're having touch points with our players off the field. And
there's a reason you're winning championships.
Well, and we've learned it worked, but I love the fact that now you get affirmation that there's probably some reasons these things work. It's not just a good idea. Man, if you want to be successful, implement these strategies.
Yeah, okay, and so you're a head coach, but the same things apply as a position coach, right? Or if you're an assistant coach in some capacity. You can, obviously it's great if it's program-wide. Those are winning kinds of things to make your receiver core the best it could be, or your O-line group, or your point guards, or whatever it might be.
Well, when I was on staff with Todd Graham as head coach, as a position coach, he was adamant that at the start of practice, when everyone is on the field stretching, that you are walking up and down the aisles touching players. You're slapping hands, you're fist bumping, you're touching them on the head, you're making physical contact with players before practice. And then after practice, I mean, this was his leadership. But there was a strategy to go to the locker room and make a round through there doing players that you don't coach and just trying to build relationship. And, you know, there's a lot of things I disagreed with Todd Graham about, but he knew how to build winners and a winning program. And some of that was because he understood at some level that these things are important.
Absolutely. Well, we know the brain responds to physical touch. You've got to understand different experiences, make that different. And I can be too touchy with some kid because of his experience. But for the most part, that physical touch is a winning strategy.